What's going on, guys? It's Mike here, coming to you with episode 2 of my podcast, where we talk about everything to do with EMS, all topics. And on this episode, we're going to be discussing a report that came out that was done by Fitch and Associates in my local community, of Jefferson County in Alabama. They contracted with a company out of Missouri to come up with a report to analyze, collect data, figure out why the EMS system there is chaotic, using their terms, and it's pretty chaotic. It's bad. And we're going to go over that today. As always, if you like this, comment, like, subscribe. This is Real Talk. Let's get after it. All right, guys. So I've got the report pulled up, and I will put a link to the report in the description below if you want to go and extensively read this. I'm going to hit the high points of this. It's 60 pages long. Well, it's 35 pages long, but it's an extensive report, and it's a lot to digest. They note critical findings: delayed or no ambulance response, chaotic 911 call system, EMS not recognized as essential public safety service, no single entity is accountable. Okay, so we're gonna dive into these real quick. Delayed or no ambulance response, that has a lot to do with staffing issues, hospital wait times, companies not differentiating or not separating, IFT, not separating IFT transports from 911 responsibility. There's a lot of times where your 911 truck has to handle an interfacility transport because these companies that are in Jefferson County are for-profit companies. They're private EMS services, and that's what they rely on. So there's a lot to digest in that too in itself, because a lot of the reasons are like, how do I do this without, I'm trying to figure out how to explain this without compromising some legality issues. So I'm going to try to do this as best as I can. So, for example, let's throw a hypothetical, guys. Okay. I said it. It's hypothetical. I'm trying to wink. All right. That's hypothetical. Okay. Here we go. I respond to a call. This patient has the sniffles. Okay. Patient wants to go to the hospital by ambulance for the sniffles. Instead of there being a system in place where I could contact a doctor and be like, hey, this is what I got. These are my vitals. Patient's stable. Patient complains of having sinus congestion for the past 4 days. Vitals are stable. Patient's stable. Patient's alert oriented, has a GCS. Like, they're alert and oriented. I'm not going to go into the GCS stuff, but they're alert and oriented, and they're capable of making their own decisions. There's no life-threatening situation going here. Instead of there being a system in place where I could telehealth a doctor, and that doctor say, no, you don't need to go to the hospital by ambulance, I'm going to write you a prescription for some Flonase and Z-Pack, and you can pick this up at your local pharmacy. Follow up by going to your primary care physician or a regular doctor's office in the morning and get you some shots for your sniffles. No, I have to, because this patient wants to go to the hospital, I have to take them to the hospital. There goes what your 911 ambulance is for, life-threatening emergencies. It's already out. So now you're spending an hour on the call in total. Okay. You get to the hospital, you register the patient. Okay. You then have to sit in the hospital for an hour to 3 hours, sometimes 4. I've had situations where I've had to, we call it holding the wall, where the patient's on the stretcher sitting in the hall, in the open, in the ER for upwards of 6 to 8 hours. I've had that happen before. Instead of freeing up that, like, just go put them in the lobby. Like, what's the difference between somebody walking in off the streets with the sniffles and the patient that I have on my stretcher? You're spending an exuberant amount of time just waiting for a room. And the reason is because this patient's not critical. But as far as I know, in Jefferson County, and other ambulance services need to start doing this, as far as I know, okay, there is no regulation or law against us politely going up to the desk and saying, hey, I'm putting this patient in the lobby. They can't hit you for abandonment, because as far as I know, once you arrive on the property of that hospital, it becomes an EMTALA concern. And it's the hospital's patients, the hospital's responsibility. We're basically watching this patient for free for the hospital. Now, granted, I do know that there are certain situations where if a patient's unstable, I'm okay with sitting there with that patient because the hospital doesn't have a room. And I'd rather have that patient be in a readily accessible place for an emergency intervention by the medic or whatever. Okay. So there needs to be a system, like a fast triage system where, like, hey, the nurse comes up, gets the report. They can take their own vitals if they want to. Doctor comes and lays eyes on them, says, yeah, send them to the lobby. So let them go sit in the lobby. We'll get to them when we can. That truck's freed up. There you go. But that doesn't happen. So that's got a lot to do with delayed and no response to the ambulance. All right. Second thing is staffing. Staffing is a huge issue. And the reason is, well, number one, COVID killed EMS. A lot of people quit because they didn't want anything to do with the virus, the flu. But anyways, I'm not getting into that. Anyways, COVID killed the business. A lot of people got out because of COVID. Secondly is pay. Pay's terrible. They need to do something about the reimbursement rates for insurance. And they need to pay better. They need to pay better. There's no career advancement in EMS unless you want to make FTO or supervisor. You could possibly go and get a degree, go get some extra training on your own and become an operations manager. But that takes forever, and it's usually a very senior person or somebody with a degree in management that gets that. But that's it. Like, that's as far as you go. There's no upward movement. Your upward movement is to go work at a fire department, which most people do. Yeah, those are some things that I think would help free up the ambulances in Jefferson County a lot. Chaotic 911 call system. From what I understand, this report, there's 14 sites that handle 911 calls. Like the person actually calling 911. There's 14 of those. That's crazy. And in the report, it talks about a certain situation where two of their people, people from Fitch, were standing next to each other, called 911, right, to test the system. One person was sent to a different 911 site, and the other person was sent to a different 911 site. They were sent from that 911 site to the appropriate 911 site. Like, there needs to be I feel like there needs to be a better system in place for that. I did like that portion of this report, and I did read this whole report. I feel like that's something that does need to be fixed really quick. I feel like there needs to be a faster system in place where, like, maybe the initial caller puts in the report and it automatically, like, geocodes to the location of the caller, so that way that 911 system, like, it pops up on like a CAD system and be like, oh, look, this person's here, and it automatically gets sent out. Like, it gets dispatched, like, quickly. Because a lot of times, by the time the initial recipient of the call gets it, they get it to the appropriate person of the location of the person that called. Then they have to activate their municipality. All right. Then they have to turn around and activate the private ambulance. Then the ambulance has to, and then the ambulance dispatcher has to dispatch their ambulance. By the time all of these resources even hit the ground rolling, the patient probably could have been at the hospital. Like, that's excessive amount of time. Another thing that they noted is EMS not recognized as essential public safety service. I don't understand how it's not. It seems pretty essential to me. And if it's not, I just, that blows my mind. I don't understand how we're not recognized as an essential service. Like, I just it's so they did talk about in the report that there's legislation that has been moved forward that is waiting to be voted on. I don't know why. It's probably because everybody's concerned about building a wall and lowering our taxes and all that stuff, which is important stuff. But let's get this simple legislation passed so we can improve our infrastructure. But there's a bill to be voted on to make EMS in Jefferson County, in Alabama, I think, an essential, label it as an essential service, which would help give funding, and it would allow for these private ambulance companies to apply for grants and stuff. It says no single entity is accountable. Of course they're not. They're private EMS for-profit systems. They're not obligated to respond to anything. That's not against the law. That's not. But in Bessemer, where Shoals has the subsidized contract, they are obligated to respond because they're receiving money from that city or municipality. They are obligated to respond. It lists, let's see, let me get to page 6 so we can go over the services that are provided in the Jefferson County area. There are 4 for-profit EMS private ambulance services: Shoals Ambulance Service, Regional Paramedic Service, Advantage Ambulance, and North Star. Shoals Ambulance Services 911 for Bessemer and the surrounding county area of Bessemer. And from what I understand, they've done a well enough job with that the City Council of Bessemer has voted yes to a 3-year extended contract with them, and they are subsidized. So that means they're getting paid by the city for some sort of reimbursement, which is a good thing, I think. RPS, Advantage, as far as I know, RPS is a larger service, and they do have a lot of trucks. And they service a lot of areas, even outside of Jefferson County. They service a lot of areas. Their presence in Jefferson County has kind of diminished. Advantage Ambulance, from what I understand, they provide 911 for Pleasant Grove, I think, and they do some IFTs. And from what I understand, there may be 1 or 2 trucks for that one. And then North Star Paramedic Services is located out of McCalla area. They run that side of the county. But it did talk about in the report, and I feel like that was a good thing that they talked about this. That truck that North Star has spends a majority of time in the adjacent county of Tuscaloosa. So there's that. There's 12 fire departments within Jefferson County, excluding Birmingham. Okay, because Birmingham transports their own city. Like, they have rescue trucks that are ambulances with paramedics and EMTs on them, and they transport out of the city of Birmingham, and they handle their own stuff. They did not participate in this study. The 12 fire departments: Center Point Fire, Concord Fire, Forestdale Fire, Hoover Fire Department, Irondale, McAdory, Mount Brook, Palmerdale, Rocky Ridge, Trustful, Vestavia Hills, and Warrior. I believe all of these, except for Palmerdale, have transport capabilities. Yes. They didn't put Bessemer City Fire Department in here or Hueytown. Hueytown doesn't have transport. Bessemer has 2 transport units for backup. In the case of Shoals not having an ambulance available. But they don't utilize those transports like they should, I feel like. But that's not my call. That's just an observation I'm making. But yeah. There are 12 hospitals in Jefferson County. That's a lot. The largest one being UAB, University of Alabama, Birmingham. That is a very large, prestigious hospital. They're a study hospital. But one thing that needs to be fixed, that needs to be fixed immediately, is the hospital wait times for ambulances for non-life-threatening situations. And they need to fix this. We got to transport everything that wants to go. If we're not essential, then I don't feel like should be obligated to transport people with sniffles to the hospital. You get what I'm saying? It goes into talk about the demand, density mapping, 911 dispatch, and it's got descriptions in the report that talk about the locations of the centers and the highest demand areas. And then here's the part where they talk about recommendations for immediate action. And that starts on page 15. I'm going to scroll down to that, and I'm going to go over some of it. Let's see. It's 10. There's a lot of cool diagram, a lot of data collected on this. If you want to go look at it yourself, it's really, really nice what they did. But I feel like Jefferson County already kind of had an idea of what was going on. On page 15, it goes over recommendations for immediate action, and I am going to read this one for you because it's only one page. Emergency declaration to contract for ambulance services. So they're talking about RFP contract to put out for companies to bid on. And I'm going to read that for you right now. The single most important action that the county can take is to declare a public health and safety emergency. This action would allow the county to immediately contract with an external entity for dedicated ambulance services in the unprotected areas. This report's been out since August, okay? They haven't done that, but they're complaining about ambulances, but they haven't done that. All right, Fitch analyzed current system data as was available to identify areas with seriously delayed ambulance service. Based on this analysis, Fitch developed a temporary stopgap system. It is recommended that an ambulance contract with an external EMS agency be executed immediately to provide 8 EMS units, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Additionally, the county could contract with that entity to provide a dedicated EMS dispatcher position 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, to ensure that transferring of 911 calls to an external provider is seamless. The dispatch position would be co-located in the Jefferson County Communications Center. The contracted ambulance could be dispatched anywhere in the county as needed for primary or secondary backup to established providers. A system of controls should be to monitor and continuously recommend improvements of the system. System of controls is discussed in greater detail later in this report. The shaded areas in figure 4 and 5 are the areas without contracted or dedicated ambulance services. The service is covered by agencies if they are available or for extreme distances. To compound the response issues, EMS and fire agencies within the county do not operate according to their state licensure, as they do not respond with mutual aid immediately upon request. Fitch consultants witnessed an unavailable ambulance less than 5 minutes from a call that would not respond. The reason for non-response is to ensure coverage within their hometown. However, licensure requires mutual aid response to adjacent areas. The absence of reliable mutual aid response creates further insufficiencies and life safety issues for residents. This is true. This is true. There's been times where mutual aid has been called and nobody responds. And it's sad. I remember, like, when I started, if we called, like, I started at Rural Metro. They no longer work here. They sold to AMR. And then it's Lifeguard now. But they're owned by AMR. Yeah. If we didn't have a truck, we would call RPS and RPS would respond. But for some reason that has stopped. And I think it's just because both services are spent. Like, we don't have the capabilities to do this anymore. And it's sad. It's really sad. But I didn't know that was in the licensure. It's crazy. Something needs to be done about that. They did a study on staffing and demand analysis. That's on page 21. We'll go down to it real quick and we'll go over that as well. But as far as I know, these private ambulances are not obligated to run certain areas. So especially like Shoals, their contract is with Bessemer, so they're the sole provider for Bessemer. Staffing and demand analysis to service 911 emergency volume geographic coverage plus normalized hourly demand provides the total number of staff ambulances required per hour. The figures that follow indicate staffing to demand both with and without Shoals coverage. The figures read left to right, Sunday to Saturday, reviewing each hour's average demand, then normalized for the estimated time on task for the areas mentioned in figures 4 and 5 that have no dedicated EMS coverage. Volume was determined using the most recent 52 weeks. The light blue areas indicate how many units are required per the marginal resources required to capture the prescribed geographic response time. The bar lines indicate the average. We'll go down here and look at it. We'll go down here and look at this. Let's see. Let me look. I want to make sure. Talk about the cost of it. Estimated average revenue per transport is $348.50. That's pretty bad. There needs to be more funding for this, because like to get staffing, to get people, it's really not complicated at all. You pay them better, more benefits, lower the cost of insurance, create educational opportunities, create career advancement opportunities, and improve on operations and capabilities. And I feel like that would get better quality people to come and work for some of these companies. So it's really not a hard fix on that end, but for some reason people drag their feet on it. And I feel like this is something that could be done like immediately. So they talk about like government getting funding options for this. Talks about the county has access to the American Rescue Plan Act, funds to stand up an ambulance service, and accomplish several other efforts towards establishing a system. And that would bring in like government funding for staffing ambulances in the county that are unserviced, like they discussed in the earlier topic. They go on to talk about contract with an external EMS agency, and that would be like essential staffing stuff, like contract work, which would cost a lot of money. I don't really see Jefferson County doing that, but I could be wrong. Talks about purchasing ambulances and fire first response resources. I'm gonna tell you right now, firefighters hate transporting patients. They got into fire to fight fire. They do not like to transport. And the ones that do transport, those guys are burnt, man. Which I'm burnt, to be honest. I'm so tired. So I work 24 on, 48 off, and when my shift's over, man, I'm ready to go home and go to bed. It's so rough. It's like 24 hours of just torture. But, I do it. So it goes on to talk about like ways to get more people in the EMS system, like how to provide education to get newer employees and stuff. That's like nobody's gonna really take off interest into this until they fix the pay and stuff for private EMS. But we'll see what happens in the future. But for right now, it's kind of dragging its feet. This whole report that they came out with, I really haven't seen much action towards anything. And this report's been out since August, so you've had August, September, October to start trying to get some of this stuff in place. And I haven't heard or seen anything that really wants to fix it. So, but we're gonna look at a video here that I found, and this guy is operations manager for North Star in Jefferson County, and he really hit the nail on the coffin here with this statement. And I feel like this was good. This was really good. Hang on. Let me try to find this real quick. Let me go back here. History. Yeah, this one. We're gonna watch this. Let me swap to my live scene here. There we go. We're gonna watch this video. This is...
When Durante builds a high-quality, low-maintenance deck, you can expect a superior product built right the first time.
It is so nice that it makes the entire house look better. Everything from the beautiful railing to the composite decking, it actually improved, gave the house a facelift.
Right now, get $2,000 off on your new high-quality composite deck by Durante. Plus, payments as little.
Now to a new perspective tonight from the folks who respond to your 911 calls when you need help. The paramedics in Jefferson County who are part of a system that a new study calls chaotic.
Chastity Maxey on your side now, getting information from ambulance service today about the challenges they face every day and why they say they're dealing with a worker shortage. Chastity.
This is really good. This guy hit it right on the head, man.
Well, Sarah and Jonathan, the bulk of these ambulance issues are happening in West Jefferson County. And since Blount County borders this area, a lot of times their EMS service will jump in to help when necessary. Now, of course, all of this is because of a huge shortage. And the person that I talked to earlier today says that paramedics and EMTs are not getting the pay or the respect that they're due.
Yes. Yes. They're not. It's not happening. Like, we get paid crap. Nobody, and all of a sudden now everybody's like, hey, we need y'all. When before we were just, just taxi service, man. It was like, here, just transport this patient, get out of my hair. Like, that's how I feel. That's how we feel. I feel like second-class employees.
I think there's a big misunderstanding about what the requirements are actually to work on an ambulance.
Wesley Powell is the operations manager for Blount County EMS ambulance services. He says paramedics and EMTs get similar training as registered nurses, but not nearly as much pay, which is one reason there's a
That's true. So like an associate's RN degree is 2 years. It's a 2-year school. Okay. To get from EMT to paramedic total is about 2.5 to 3 years, maybe 4, depending on which school you go to. It's crazy.
Shortage.
It's a 2-year program to get your RN, associates in as an RN. It takes 2 years to get an associate's and get your paramedic. A nurse, you may make $30 an hour. As a paramedic, even with that 2 years of training, you're lucky to make $15 or $20 an hour.
Powell says many EMS workers are turning to fire departments because municipalities can afford to pay more than private ambulance services.
Medicare and Medicaid rates are set by the federal government and the state government, so we get that reimbursement rate, and we can only pay our people based on the money we get reimbursed. So there's a big disparity there that needs to be changed.
Powell says that alone is making people think twice before entering the field. But respect is another issue.
Okay,
we're not recognized as an essential service out there. And that's one of the things the Fitch report pointed out. We give cardiac drugs like Cardizem. We give sedation drugs like ketamine. We work full arrest, cardiac arrest, and give all the cardiac meds that you would get in a emergency room with a physician and a nurse, but we do it in the back of a moving ambulance.
Now, Paul says that long wall times at hospitals is also adding to the strain and the availability of ambulance services, which is why you should not call for an ambulance unless you have a real emergency. He says that the shortage of paramedics and EMTs has been a problem for many years, and there isn't a simple solution. Reporting live in.
This is so true. Like everything in that right there, everything in that video is true. Okay, we're not respected. We don't get the pay. We're capable of doing just about, like, minus, blood analysis and certain medications and procedures and stuff. There's a lot of stuff that we do that nurses can't do. And I'm not dissing on nurses. Nurses are essential. I respect nurses. I'm actually myself going to school to be a nurse. But how do I say this without stepping on toes? There's a difference between providing health care in the field where things can be chaotic, you're cramped, there's sounds, there's lights, there's scenes. You have to process all this stuff, all right? And then when you get in a hospital setting, it's more controlled. It's in a controlled environment, opposed to being in the field. It's an uncontrolled environment. There's uncertainties, okay? And we go through the same amount of, like, time-wise of education go through the same amount of education time lengthwise as a nurse does. But nurses, they formed a union. They got together, they stood up, they demanded more pay, they went on strikes, they did all this stuff. and they got it, you know. But EMS, well, we don't do that. We don't speak up, and we don't hold people accountable for what's going on, and we don't make the same amount of money, get paid less, have less benefits, less like it's gotta be fixed. It's gotta stop. Like this service is gonna die out eventually if it doesn't turn around. Like, this is gonna be so stretched that it's not gonna be here anymore. Like, that's what I feel like. And these things need to be addressed, like, seriously. But that's pretty much the meat and potatoes of what's going on, and I wanted to touch on this. If you like this kind of content, be sure to comment below. Let me know what you think. Let me know some topics you might want to discuss, some questions you have. Hit that like button, turn the bell notification on, so you'll be alerted to when I post another wonderful podcast for you, where we talk about nonsense and stuff related to EMS. And hit that subscribe button. But that's all I got for you today. And I'll see you on the next one. Peace.